our 30 visits that we just finished up here last week. And now we're kind of in the final stages here, putting the final touches on our board. So there's been a lot of people that have played a role in that. A lot goes into this draft to get us to where we are right now. There's some people that I want to thank, and it starts with JG and his staff. I've asked them to do a lot in terms of evaluations, Zoom calls, 30 visits. Meanwhile, they're trying to install a new scheme, and then meeting with our players as of a couple weeks ago. So the off-season program is rolling. It's brought a lot of excitement to the building. It's great to see our players around. So it's been an exciting time. So those guys have played a vital part of our draft prep, and I really appreciate the work that they put in. There's been a bunch of people around the building that have helped us with our draft prep. The training and strength staff, the nutrition department, the operations department, Maddie C. and Dan O'Brien have done a lot for us. The PR department, the custodial and the janitorial staff, a lot of people have chipped in to aid us in our evaluation. I'm fortunate to work alongside a great analytics group that's led by Charlie Adkins, Joe D'Andruzzi, Nick Tice, Carter Tamlin, and Heather Goldade. Those guys have done a great job of the research and the tools that they provided me. And the rest of our staff has been great through our draft preparation. Finally, I want to specifically recognize a special group that it's near and dear to my heart. It's how I was raised, and that's our personnel department. There's a lot of nights on the road, a Fairfield Inn in Stillwater or Ames or God knows where. But these guys spent a lot of time away from home, away from their families. They sacrificed for the betterment of our organization. I just want to thank those guys. Specifically, Dave Sears came in here and has been a great help to me. His thoroughness and attention to detail, our draft prep wouldn't have been the same without him. On top of that, Matt Harris, Quentin Harris, Drew Grigson, Josh Scobie, Ryan Gold, and Glenn Fox and Rob Kissel have all provided great leadership as we've gone through this process. And finally, the scouts, Andrew Caskins, John Mancini, Chris Colmer, Luke Palco, Zach Canny, Darius Vanette, Fonz Knight, Keegan Lair, Zach Devlin, Alex Valles, Chad Jenkins, Stephen Wise, and Andrew Ford. Those guys, I've changed a lot of our processes, asked them to do different things, and I can't thank those guys enough. They've been vital to the last few months here of our preparation. So with that, I'd love to open it up and throw it to you guys and see if there's any questions that we can answer.
Following up on that,
excuse me,
how is it?
If you don't mind, just say your name so they can help.
Okay, yeah, Howard Walsh.
Howard, good to see you again.
PHNX. Along those lines, when you come in as a new general manager and you have a staff that's there, how is, and you've just credited them obviously, but how is that in terms of being comfortable? You dealing with them, those guys saying, well, gosh, it's a change here, who knows what the future is, but how is that, that whole atmosphere?
Yeah, and I think it's a process. I think it's a process of them getting to know me and me getting to know them. And, there's things that they did here in the past that I've adjusted on them, and I've thrown things at them on the fly, and they've been tremendous. There's different, thoughts on why I do certain things, and quite honestly, there's things that they did here that I looked at, and yeah, that makes sense. So it's really a getting to know process for all of us, and really adjusting on the fly. This is a long process, and we got there and wouldn't have done it without the help of all them.
I'm Josh Langford.
Hey, Josh, good to see you.
On a podcast, a team podcast, back after you were hired, Michael Bidwell said that they were going to change the process of how you guys evaluated talent, how you guys approached the draft, wasn't going to be the best player available anymore. How did you go about doing that, and kind of what's the new philosophy, new process?
Yeah, and I think that's piecemeal, Josh. I mean, I think there's certain things that we threw right at our guys, and we adjusted right away. And I think there's things that are still to come. That I think we're trying to do this on the run, right? And there's only so many things that you can do, and there's a lot of things that I adjusted to them rather than completely having them take on my philosophies and my processes. So those processes are going to continue to get changed. But the adaptability. I mean, JG's talked about adaptability a lot. Like that, it's the same for our staff, same for the scouting staff, same for everybody in football ops, and they've done a tremendous job of adjusting.
Bob McMahon,
hey, Bob.
Republic, for you and John. In terms of the importance of, everybody tries to ace the draft, but if you can get 3 starters out of a draft that's generally considered really, really good, How important is it that you do that not only this year, but next year to get the rebuild going faster and turn the corner much faster?
Well, I think we're trying to get as many good players and good people on the team as possible. So, I think every draft is important. I think this is a big opportunity for us to add talent to our team, to add the right type of people that fit our team from both a talent and a culture standpoint. And so this is a major step in the league year of an opportunity for us to add those players. So, is it 3-star? I don't know really what that number is. We're going to try to add as many good players and people as we can.
But let me say, Bob, I would say, because I just cringed when you said that word, our sole focus is to win football games. So that's in our thought process, what can we do on a daily basis, whether it be through acquisition of players or what we're doing with our players now. Our sole focus is to win football games, so that's what we're doing.
The word cringe you didn't like?
I didn't like the word rebuild. I cringed.
Great for you.
Good to see you.
What's it going to take for you to move off that number 3 pick?
Well, I think with any trade that comes up, there's got to be opportunity, right? So it takes 2 teams to make a trade, all right? That's the first thing. And, I think that's something that we're going to really dive into next week is, if the phone does ring and someone shows interest, then we're going to have to weigh that, right? It's a give and take. Is there a player there that we want to take there? And there obviously is. There's only 2 players that are going to be drafted ahead of where we pick. And so we have to weigh that versus if there is an offer and what exactly that offer is. So, I think those talks will really start progressing next week, but it's one that we're going to have to wait and see just what opportunities are or aren't there.
Quick follow-up, have you had any calls yet?
There has been discussions, I'd say, back as far as the combine. It's pretty preliminary back then. It started to pick up here, and I would say it's going to continue to pick up as we get closer to next Thursday night.
You say there were going to be 10 calls
I
last
can't
night?
wait to see Monty work the phones on Thursday.
How many calls did you say last night?
A lot. He'll answer that for you, but I think all teams talk to all teams, so probably 31 calls.
You guys will be happy to know the phones are set up and operational. So, hi, Darren.
How are you doing? I guess I should say Darren. With where you guys are in building this roster, and obviously there's change coming because of you guys coming in, does that make a draft day trade any more likely than you could see yourself doing 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road?
I don't think so, Darren. I think every situation is going to be evaluated as it comes up. I think if the trade makes sense and it's the right decision for our team at the time, then we'll do it. And if the right move is to sit and pick a player who we've done a lot of work on through the process, then we'll be prepared to do that. So I wouldn't say that it's any more likely now as opposed to down the line.
Monty, Cameron,
Hey, Cam.
Sports. What do you make of the quarterbacks in this draft? Everybody thinks there's going to be a mad rush for quarterbacks at the top. Obviously you're set, but what do you make of it?
Yeah, I hear that too. I can't see the boards of 31 other teams. Everybody's going to have different takes on that. It's a little bit of an unknown, Cam, as is with everything about the draft. We can sit up here and try to predict what's going to happen, but in reality, nobody really knows. And the quarterbacks are always a big part of that, right? And so I think we all got to kind of just wait and see what happens come Thursday night.
Mark Boone,
Hey, Mark.
CBS 5 Jones family. Hey, did you guys have a chance to sit down and chat with Will Anderson? If so, what jumps out to you guys still say?
Yeah, we have talked to Will. We've talked to a lot of players. Will's a good player. He's been a good player for a long time at a great program in Alabama. We've evaluated Will just as we have a number of prospects in the draft, and ultimately what our job is to assign a value to what we feel about Will and every other prospect. So, I'd like to break you down specifically what I feel about every player, guy by guy, but I don't know that would go over real well, right? Probably got to keep a few things secret. So,
that's right.
yeah, appreciate the question though.
Greg Moore, Arizona.
Hey, Greg, how are you?
I'm okay, how about you?
I'm great.
Good to hear. How have the allegations against Michael Bidwell from a former talent evaluator affected how you do your job?
Absolutely none.
Not even in free agency?
Absolutely none.
last night from JG
Hi,
at
Danny.
the, hi Monty. We learned from JG at the uniform reveal last night that on the 30 visits, he liked to ask the players that were coming in about Kyler Murray and what they thought about him. What was something that you liked to focus on throughout those 30 visits, whether it was here, at dinner, you know, what was your main goal there?
Yeah, well, I on our 30 visits, the the process that we use this year, the very first part of the day is the first thing that I told the players when they came in is we want to get to know you as the person. Okay, we don't want you to be something that you're not. We want to find out. We want you to not try to tell us the answers that you think you want us to hear. We want you to be yourself, because what we're trying to find out is we're trying to find out who they are as people and really show them what a day in the life would be like coming to work at the Arizona Cardinals. And so we ran these guys around, and they met a lot of different people, and we did different things with them. Ultimately, the goal was to just find out who they were. So, that was my main goal once we got through the, roughly 6 hours that we spent with each guy when they came in. And, really when you get through the day, spending that much time with, you have a much better feel of who they are as people.
Monty, JG said last night that you guys did an exercise where y'all wrote down names who you wanted to draft, and I think you said y'all had 8 of the same 10 names. Were you surprised, like, that you guys thought that same, or y'all spending enough time together? Like, what does it say about?
I'm not surprised at all, actually. I think in working with JG in these last couple months, I mean, we see things similar from a football standpoint, and really more importantly from a person standpoint. And so those are the two big things that we're trying to evaluate. And I think through the processes that we've been through, whether it's talking to guys at the combine, or talking to guys on our 30 visits, or the Zoom calls that we've been on, we really get a feel. And it's, there's different personalities. Just like in this room, there's 30, 40 different personalities. That's the way it is with players too. And so we just have to get a feel, and ultimately we want to get a baseline for what we're dealing with in terms of a player's makeup and personality, just so we know what it's going to be like if we're coming to work with them every day.
Did you agree on the same name at the top of the list?
Yeah. Well, luckily we got another week to finish that. It wasn't, I would say our list wasn't about who was at the top. It was just a general, like, who do we want on our team?
Is your board set, and how many people are on the board? And then a second part of that is, are you a mock drafter? And if so, how many kind of renditions of a mock?
Boy, you covered a lot of ground there. Okay, yeah, I would say our board is 95% done, and really it's probably even closer to 100. It's, now at this point is actually, Josh, when we are going to turn our attention to some of those mock drafts and just take a look at them and start walking through some scenarios that may or may not happen. Some of those mock drafts are accurate, some of them are crazy, but in all honesty, the crazy ones might turn out to be right, so we don't know. And I think really the draft is about, just like in a game, it's about reacting to what happens, because we do not know what's going to happen. And so it's fun to consider, and the mocks help us with some of those scenarios, like, oh man, I didn't consider that. Well, it might happen, so if that happens, then we'll do this. And so they help us in that process.
So were you reading other mocks, or are you doing your own mocks?
We're reading other mocks. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How much do you think that Jonathan's previous experience as a scout has really helped in this process?
It's helped a lot. He understands that. He understands a way of looking at players, and just really, it's something that he's continued to develop through his coaching career. But it's a unique perspective. Jonathan knows what we ask our scouts to do and what their job is, and so I think that brings a really unique perspective and an appreciation for what the guys on our side of the office do.
Monty, can you address the trade request from Budda Baker, where that stands, and then do you see where this team trades him at all?
Yeah, so here's what I would say. I'd say myself, JG, we've had a lot of conversation with Budda and his representation, a lot of productive conversations, and those continue to happen. I understand that Budda went public with his request last week. I would say that the conversations that I've had with Budda are gonna. I want those to remain between Budda and I. Those are personal. Those are private, and I'm not going to get into a situation where I'm handling one of those situations in the public forum. So I hope you guys appreciate kind of that. But again, I think I've been clear about how I feel about Budda as a person and a player, and nothing about that has changed.
Was that tough to hear for you? I mean, you got, when you're, one of your first days here, you mentioned Budda, as a player you want to build a team around.
No, I like to hear all our players, how they're feeling and what they're going through, because each one of them are different. But like Monty said, just talking to him, I know what's in his heart, and I know he's a phenomenal person, and he's a phenomenal player, and we've had a great conversation so far and a good relationship, and looking forward to keeping that moving forward.
What's your philosophy in being in the top 10 of drafting best player available versus drafting for position?
My philosophy is to draft the best player for the Cardinals. So the right fit for the Cardinals, So we've put a ton of work on that, and we've had a lot of discussions on that, and ultimately, position, best player, we're going to take the best player, the best fit for the Cardinals.
Tyler Drake with Arizona Sports. What's been the toughest part of the job so far for you?
Oh, toughest. You know what? It's been great. It's just been day by day, chipping away, doing whatever I can to help out and help the team and do my role. I don't know that there's been something that's I would classify as toughest. It's this is something that I've waited a long time for. Been in a few different buildings and pick and choose from some things I like, some things I didn't like, and it's been fun to implement them and excited for Thursday night to put them into practice.
Free agent strategy has been significantly different from what we've seen in recent years. Top name guys, big signing bonus, all that. Can you speak to the strategy, and has money been a hindrance for you, or is this intentional that you're bringing in guys that don't have the biggest names and the biggest profiles?
Are you talking in free agency, Greg? Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's the same. It's much the same discussion as the draft. I mean, we're trying to find the right players for the Cardinals while also bringing in talent, bringing in depth, bringing in competition. Okay, and so the more that we can add on that, it's going to improve everybody around us. Okay, so I think you asked if money was a hindrance. No, money's not a hindrance. But in free agency, it takes two sides to make a deal, right? So it's. But ultimately, we're trying to put on the field the most competitive 90-man roster that we can put together, that we can get ready to win games in September. So that's been our focus from the time that we've got here, and that's going to continue to be our focus as we go through the draft and then other team-building opportunities the rest of the way here as we lead up to the opening.
Houston picks a player that's not a quarterback at 2. Will that preclude you from drafting a player at 3 and resisting the urge to trade down?
No, I think I have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, what's going to happen at 1 or 2, and I think that's a little bit why next week when we go through our draft exercises, then those are the questions that we're going to have to ask ourselves. So no, I don't think anything that happens in front of us will dictate what we're going to do at 3.
Generally, as you've evaluated this draft overall, and seems there's a number of older players because of college and COVID, extra years of eligibility. How's that affected the evaluation when it seems to be a lot of older players than normal?
Yeah, I mean, I think really it affects more so the volume of players. I mean, there's been certain players that have chosen to go back to college. So I don't know how many that number is, but there are a number of guys who normally would have been eligible for this year's draft. As it pertains to the age of the player, I don't know that has really changed anything. Ultimately, it's still what they can do both on the field and who they are as people off the field. I think really when you talk about the age component, it's really, or the COVID and all that, it's really the volume of players that are in the draft.
But does it affect at all that you might, if the guy's 24 or 25 already, and that by the time the first contract's over, there'd be almost 30 in some cases? Does that affect your decisions on who you draft?
No, I mean, I think that's a small consideration, but ultimately, like, we're making a determination on both the player's ability on the field and the person off the field.
This is for Coach Gannon. How do you deal with distractions, like things that just come up, just totally throw you
Yeah,
off?
that's a great question. Is someone gonna call Cam out with a fine, or am I gonna have to? I mean, unbelievable, huh? No fine? No fine? Yeah, that's the norm, okay. Yeah, I mean, be where your feet are, you know what I mean? And that's, I think what a lot of narratives or what a lot of people think are distractions, they're really not if you're focused on what you're doing each day. And, you know, that my focus doesn't waver when I'm in here. Each day is trying to get our players and coaches improving and get them better so we put the best product that we can on the field to ultimately win games. So, you know, that's my sole focus.
Now, you guys, there's the DeAndre Hopkins storyline has kind of dominated the offseason, whether you guys are going to keep him, trade him, whatever. What can you say about that?
It's, you know, Greg, it's similar to the Budda conversation. I've had similar, I've had a lot of interaction with Hop. He's been great. Good discussions back and forth. You know, as it pertains to his situation, I'm going to keep those discussions between us as well. But, you know, Hop's he's been proven to be a good player in this league, and he's obviously a very talented player. But, you know, I think productive conversations with Hop, just going to keep those between us.
Luke Witten here with 12 Sports. Nice to
Yeah, good to see you.
You mentioned your draft board's about 95% complete. Obviously, a very fluid situation. You don't know what's going to happen. But when you look at that draft board, can you hint to us whether it's leaning more defensive side of the ball or offensive? Or
we're really digging in now, huh? The short answer is no. I can't tell you that. Good try, though. A really good try. Yeah.
John,
When it comes to your process, Monty, you come in January and you have a staff already here. How much have you been able to implement what you would want to do if you were starting from scratch and compared to what you had to do coming in kind of midway through the?
Yeah, and I think that's ongoing, right? Like I think there's certain things that I've been able to get in that we could do on the fly, and I think there's things that we still got to put some more time in, which is fine. I mean, there's certain processes that we can talk through, and yep, okay, we'll adjust, we'll do this, and then there's certain processes really that pertain to different times of the year that will be more applicable when we get to, say, call it the fall, when our scouts go out to training camp and then the fall. So, you know, I think it was just being intentional with what exactly we could change and what was going to be the most useful for getting us to this point to get us ready for Thursday night.
How do you evaluate what is a good draft?
Well, I think you typically have to wait a couple years to see how it pans out, you know. I think everybody will come out on Saturday evening and think they knocked it out of the park, and in reality, we're going to have to wait a couple years to see how right we were.
Jonathan, you guys have a mini camp next week. It's the first time you get to be on the field. What are you trying to accomplish, given that it is the first time on the field? I mean, can you get much done? What are you trying to get out of it?
Yeah, we can get a lot done. We're going to get a lot done. You know, the coaching process starts for our guys from a standpoint of technique and schematics and how we do things on a daily basis on the grass, how we practice versus each other. That's a huge piece to being a good team, is knowing how to practice versus each other, a safe and effective way for our team to improve but also stay healthy. And I know our coaches, man, they got the weekend off, but they are ready to go on Tuesday. I know that. So, because they come in, we got physicals on Monday, and then Tuesday we start. So we're going to use the allotted time, and we're going to get a lot done. And then, you know, we had a staff meeting this morning. We're going to have to adjust on the fly a little bit because everybody comes from different places and different teams. And, you know, we got a lot of new players now and players that have been here. And I think that the main thing is being clear with what we expect to get out of being on the grass, show them good and bad examples of that, and work to keep having some good examples of it. So our players are excited. I know the coaches are excited. Good question, Darren.
With just kind of any kind of player, or are you looking for a specific? So I'm thinking about New England, right? Like New England would have, like, the tight ends all kind of fit a profile. The receivers all kind of fit a profile. There was a profile of player that could play in New England, which led to a lot of success. So I'm curious, is your system more like you give me the player, I'll figure out how to best use him, or do you have something in mind in certain guys that plug into that?
Yeah, that's part of getting together with Monty and the personnel side and the coaching side. You know, I always say, like, there's a canvas out there. There's a canvas out there, and we can have different colors and different brushes, but you got to stay inside the canvas. And there's a lot of different players that bring things to the table that can help us win games. So we're pretty convicted on how we want to do that, how we want to add people. But a huge point that Monty talked about that we're in 100% agreement on is the makeup and the character of the player. And that's what we want, really good people walking in this building.
Rock, PHNX Sports. 8 picks this draft. Would you be pretty comfortable coming away with 8 players, or would you want to have a bigger draft class?
Yeah, and I think that, Bo, that really goes into opportunities, right? I'm not, we have 8 picks right now. Opportunities may or may not present themselves, and those opportunities could be to sit where we are and take those 8 players. They could be to move back, and they could be to move up. So, I don't have a magic number in my head that says we have to come away with this many players. I think ultimately it's coming away with the right players. That's what it's going to come down to.
Jonathan, as a new first-year head coach, how do you think your response is going to be to play a starting ability for a rookie, no matter his position? Obviously, gauge on the talent, what he can do on the field for you. But do you have a good sense of how you're going to relate to rookies in terms of putting them on the field right away in important roles?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're going to come in here and get acclimated with how we want to do things. They'll fit into their position groups and the offense, defense, and special teams. And ultimately, how we're going to do things here is whoever we feel gives us the best chance to win games each game, because it can look a little different. Those guys are going to play, and we'll have a role for them. And I think that it's a huge piece to defining their role as they get in here. And being very clear with that, and not to say that their role can't change, either up or down, sometimes predicated on performance, sometimes predicated on, who we're playing that week. But I think when you clearly define that role, hey, this is how we see you adding value to the team, and when you can add value, then we'll use you other ways. If you're not adding value to the team, well, then some of that role is going to decrease. But we got a pretty clear vision of how we want to get those guys acclimated and get them start to playing for us and ultimately help us win games. Good question.
Excuse me 1 second. We'll take 2 more. We'll take Jose and Howard, and then we'll call it.
Awesome. Call it a day.
Hi, Jose. How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
As you go through the draft prep and the trade talk kind of simultaneously, what do you draw from maybe in your past to kind of navigate all of that as the draft comes close?
Yeah, I think really, Jose, it's just the years of being in the draft room, right? It's a unique experience. I think, that the decisions have been, by Thursday night, the decisions have been made. Our board is our board, so it's not a, what are you thinking here? We know which way we're going to go, right? I think what we want to reserve the time for, Jose, is if the phone rings one way or the other, or if there's a strategy to move up for a player that because we think he might not be there later. So the debate on which player A or player B, that's done. That's over. It's really waiting to see the draft strategy and moving around the board and seeing if it makes sense. And drawing upon my experiences of seeing that happen in my years, that's what I'm going to draw upon.
Howard, you have one?
Howard, one more.
Have you made it to?
Close us out, Howard.
Oh, no, Bob's got one.
Bob.
Or who?
In light of the suspensions that were handed down by the league today in Detroit and with one player in Washington, what have you guys talked about? How to remind your players what not to do on facility areas to avoid such a suspension?
Yeah, you have to educate them. You know what I mean? And I know people make mistakes, but you have to educate your players on what's acceptable and what's not. And that's an ongoing process through the entire year. And ultimately, that's why it's so important to have the right people in here. Those guys, you have to make good decisions too. But sometimes guys make mistakes. Sometimes guys don't know. It's our job to educate them. Hey, this is right and wrong, and we have to abide by these rules.
Gentlemen, thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Yep.
Anybody got room